Metz, founder of the Green Party and president, and he's going to give us a State of the Party address. Bob? Boy, that was quick.
Thanks, Robert. Freedom Party's history stretches from 1984 to 2002, from the Red Tory government of Bill Davis to the Red Tory government of Ernie Eves. Believe it or not, the big issue during the Davis years was Ontario Hydro. Freedom Party's prophetic issue paper, We're In for a Shock with Ontario Hydro, was published in 1985, and today that shock is being seen and felt by every homeowner across the province. But being right on the issues is no quick ticket to Queen's Park, and I'm not here tonight to talk to you about the issues. Tonight, I wear another hat. Before Freedom Party, my personal background was in administration and in accounting. After graduating from college with a 2-year business administration and accounting degree, I had a 10-year experience and career as senior corporate accountant with the Mortgage and Trust Company and as a Southwestern Ontario regional supervisor of a large real estate company. This experience taught me many principles about the nature of organization and its relationship to power. If we want to achieve power, it helps to know what power is. Remember, I'm wearing an administrator's hat right now. Power is organized effort and knowledge applied to a specific purpose. There's a great line in a Star Trek episode that speaks tomes on the issue of organization and power. One Ferengi named Zek says to another Ferengi named Krax, he says, "One does not seize power, one accumulates it quietly without anyone noticing." The founding members of Freedom Party took an incredible risk and made an incredible investment in a totally new approach to politics. Their initial focus was not on, quote, getting elected. Instead, it was on developing an organizational structure that would foster a cultured growth of a core group of executive members, supporters, and candidates who could be counted on and relied upon to deliver a consistent, principled, and demonstrably practical message to the electorate. The time has now arrived for Freedom Party to be noticed, to become a measurable factor in Ontario elections. And again, please remember that I'm wearing the hat of an administrator. So here in general is a Reader's Digest snapshot of the state of Freedom Party as it is today. Number 1, Freedom Party has no debts. What more can you really say about that? Just this. Being debt-free means that every dollar that you contribute to Freedom Party goes to its intended target or to its objective. Being debt-free means that the time is working for us and not against us. It means that we can focus on what's ahead of us and not on what's behind us. Number 2, Freedom Party has invested in and accumulated capital assets that we can now use to support our candidates and campaigns. Because of our past emphasis on creating the infrastructure necessary to the operation of a political party, we can now focus on the more electoral goals of the party. Number 3, Freedom Party now has, for the first time in its history, an operating constitution that provides the necessary structure, rules, and procedures for organizing from the riding level to the provincial executive level and for developing party policy. Number 4, for the first time in our history, we are now formalizing party memberships, complete with soon-to-be-issued membership cards and membership benefits. Basic membership is a mere $10, which must be accompanied by a membership application, and that's those green forms you see over on the table there. All party members automatically become voting members of the existing Freedom Party riding associations that may exist where they live. If they don't have a riding association in their riding, they can start one. Just give me a call and I'll help you out. Number 5, Freedom Party has an incredible candidates service package. Last election, we fielded 14 candidates. As of today, we have about approximately 40 potential candidates already lined up, with about half already signed up, and most of the rest in the process of doing so. Our next election dinner will feature as many of these candidates as we can get out to meet you. An Ontario political party needs 12 elected MPPs in the legislature to achieve what is known as party status. Unless, of course, you're the NDP and Mike Harris bends the rules for you so that he can maintain a split in the left-wing vote, because that's what happened in the previous election. But a party needs a minimum of 52 elected candidates to be able to achieve a majority government, since there are 103 ridings in the province of Ontario. Of course, an electoral victory can be achieved with much fewer candidates. In a three-way race, for example, a party could win an election, although a minority government, with as few as 35 seats. With more parties in the race, even fewer seats can win an election. Although we already have more candidates lined up now than we have had during past elections, we do still need others. We're looking for riding organizers and volunteers. There are 103 ridings in the province, soon to be 106 by next election, so there's still plenty of room for growth and getting involved from the ground floor up. So if you're thinking about this, and I hope that some of you are, here are some of the things that we are offering you and our candidates. And this, again, gives you some idea of what I mean by some of the infrastructure we've put in place. For example, a candidate who runs for Freedom Party automatically has these following benefits. Officially registered status, and that's for the party, constituency, association, and candidate. Political tax credits for individuals and corporations. That means any money that people give to the organization, they get a very generous tax credit back. Remember, the first $300 that you give to a political party in Ontario, you get 75% off the bottom line. This is not just a deduction from your income. This is a deduction from your taxes payable. We offer administration. Any candidate that wants to sign up, they don't have to do any of the paperwork. And I'm sure any of the candidates that are here will attest to that, and that they've never gotten into any filing problems. Right, Charles? Right, Ray? Never had a problem. And we do the registrations, the official filings, the banking, contribution acknowledgments, official receipts, accounting, and annual campaign audits. We do have to be audited every year. Inquiries, membership development, financial officer, these kind of things. We have financial services, everything from all the credit cards you can imagine that we can process, to pre-authorized bank debits and checks and money orders and cash. We provide communications, media releases, newsletters, literature, membership mailers, a huge website that I could spend the whole night talking about, but that's just not the subject tonight. Audio-visual materials, election signs, platforms, policies, business cards, stationery. These are the kinds of things we do. Of course, membership mailers, funding we do the raising. We have a toll-free 1-800 number that we've had for many, many years now, which means that even if a candidate doesn't have a local constituency office, he uses that 1-800 number, they get our office, and we can treat the people as though they were calling to their riding. We offer research and support. We offer sales, leadership, constitution and bylaws, marketing and promotion, policy support, and a long-term purpose and short-term focused objective. These are just some of the things we offer our members. Newsletters. Now, I know most of you haven't seen a newsletter in about a year coming out of Freedom Party, and there's a reason for that. It's because of all the restructuring that has been going on with the party in the past year. You will be seeing the next issue of Freedom Flyer coming out in the first of the year, and you'll notice that it's going to be very different from what you've seen in the past. Freedom Flyer will no longer be like a news magazine. It's simply going to focus on riding growth, party policies, and electoral type activities. The things that you may have been used to seeing in Freedom Flyer, the side issues that we do between elections, the Elijah Elia stories, the other issues from labor to censorship or to whatever we get involved with, those will be in a new newsletter, and we're just going to call that simply Freedom Party News. And of course, there's still Consent magazines, which will carry on as it has been for the past. Number 6, Freedom Party has a unique and effective election strategy for the upcoming election. And although I can't get into this in the greatest detail, I can give you an idea of some of the things that we're going to think about doing. And with that in mind, what we've prepared for you here is just a sample of what we are planning to do. Can everyone see that? Now what you're looking at here is, at the bottom, I'll deal with these first, 3 signs. Do they kind of look familiar to you? Liberal red, NDP orange, and Conservative blue. Well, what we're thinking about doing right now is that we'll be running probably with mostly blue signs, depending on the ridings that we're in. We're kind of going to ignore the NDP because we don't think they count for anything anymore. And you may see a few red signs where you see Freedom Party candidates. Our signs are going to look pretty much like the other political party signs, and they're going to be the same kind of colors. What do you think the other parties are going to think when they see that going on? What we've developed in the map above here, sort of a sideways map of southern Ontario, is we've identified certain ridings by color. And the colors indicate how strongly the incumbent candidate won the previous election. All the green ridings are close election ridings. Ridings where, for example, the incumbent, we just registered in Prince Edward Hastings, the Liberal candidate there won by 55 votes in the last election. No wonder we were on the front page of the paper when we were just up in Belleville a couple months ago telling them that we're going to be running candidates in that riding in the next election. If we only got 100 votes, we could make the difference between the winner and the loser. And you'll see that throughout a lot of these ridings. So we're going to concentrate on some of those. In other areas, these are the blue ridings where the PCs have taken it. We're not even sure how solid blue these are anymore considering the current split. So you can see the potential of the opportunity that's unfolding before us. These are just a couple of the points that I'm getting at. I can't get into the minutiae of some of the things that we'll be doing. But certainly we'll be changing our focus in this coming election. We're going to look much more traditional. We won't be sending our party leader to anything that's vaguely resembling a, quote, fringe party candidate debate. If we're not in with the big guys, we're just not going to go because we don't want to be seen looking like a fringe party. So we want to make sure that the media and everyone who sees us realizes that we're very serious about where we're going and what we want to do. Number 7. Freedom Party has developed a clear policy position with a clear direction towards choice in healthcare, education, and electricity. It's not my intention tonight to define or defend our policies because that falls upon our main speaker. But I do want everyone to realize that the policies you see in our policy statements, which are over there in the booklet somewhere, please take one with you when you go, that they have all been subject to the discipline and process of our new party constitution. Number 8, Freedom Party has 8 principled and dedicated executive members and a leader whose primary job it is to protect the party's statement of principles and to work with members and candidates to develop and promote policies that are consistent with those principles. And just briefly, so you know who these people are, in addition to myself as party president, our executive members currently are Paul Blair, our chief financial officer. Paul, just raise your hand. Paul McKeever, our party leader. He's on the executive as well. You'll be hearing from him. Gordon Mood is on our executive. Carol Vandenberg. Barry Malcolm, who's not with us this evening. Bill Frampton, sitting at the table there. And of course, Robert Vaughan, our host and education critic of Freedom Party tonight. I should also like to take this opportunity to thank and acknowledge outgoing executive member and party leader Lloyd Walker. Lloyd, as a principled advocate of individual freedom, you are second to none. I am greatly looking forward to a time when you can once again take your rightful place as guardian of our party's most sacred trust, because I know these days your time simply does not allow. And finally, number 9. Freedom Party has over 1,000 members, supporters, and volunteers who are what make everything else I've been reviewing this evening possible. Without you and without your dedication and support, Freedom Party simply would not exist, and I'd probably still be sitting behind a desk at a large bank or a trust company, perhaps richer in personal finance, but infinitely poorer in life's experience. Thank you for the adventure. Now let us embark together on the next adventure. Campaign 2003 is already well underway. We held our first election workshop in Belleville, where our presence drew front-page attention for 2 days in a row. Our next election workshop will be on January 18 in Sarnia, where Freedom Party candidate Andrew Falvey is already generating some pre-election media attention. And Andrew, where's Andrew sitting here? Over there. Hi, Andrew. The next workshop after that will be in the Toronto area. Editorial board meetings are being arranged through party officials. On this Monday, party leader Paul McKeever and education critic Robert Vaughan will be meeting with the editorial board of the London Free Press here in London. A mass mailer is being prepared for next week. Its content: Freedom Party's Energize Ontario policy statement. Its target: Ontario's energy producers, key politicians, lobbyists, media members. Just as the government has maintained a monopoly on the generation of power in this province, they have now given Freedom Party a monopoly on the only practical, common-sense solution to Ontario's education, health, and power problems. Of course, Freedom Party has always had a monopoly on freedom. It's time to expand the franchise. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bob. It's very exciting, actually, to belong to Freedom Party these days. I've been around since 1985. The party's been around since 1984, so I know the different ups and downs that we've had, the successes, the disappointments, and to tell you the truth, I'm very, very excited to be a Freedom Party member at a time such as this. I wonder if it's time to put the notepads around for Paul's questions. But I'd like to introduce Freedom Party's new leader, Paul McKeever. Paul is a lawyer, which is interesting in and of itself for Freedom Party, considering we used to pride ourselves on the fact that we didn't have a lawyer as a leader. We'd have a fireman, we'd have a computer programmer, things like that, but we don't have a lawyer, we're different. Well, we got a lawyer for it. Paul's from Uxbridge, and I've known Paul for a little bit of time now, and I can tell you a number of things about him that get me very excited as a Freedom Party member. He's got the general prerequisites to be a leader of a party. He's intelligent. Well, he's intelligent. He has a great ability to speak. He's been on a number of shows. He was on Jim Chapman's show on cable on Wednesday. He was on Michael Coren's show on Monday. He's a frequent guest on Michael Coren. It's called in quite often to appear on Michael Coren's show. Great speaker. He has a great charisma. Just the typical stuff, right? Well, not for Freedom Party, because what Paul brings to us is something that we sorely need going into the 2003 election, and that is enthusiasm. Paul is a tireless worker. I've never seen the like before. He's generated such an excitement and enthusiasm for this party. It's getting us from 14 candidates to 6 months before an election is even called 40. A possible 40 candidates, just like that. And it's through the efforts of a man like Paul McKeever. His enthusiasm for this party and for freedom is just unbounded. Just to give you an idea of some of the stuff that he's done, if you haven't gone to our website yet, go to our website and you'll see the differences, not just in the content, but in the look and the feel. It's such a professional piece of work these days, mostly due to Paul. The policies of the Freedom Party of Ontario, crafted mostly in part by Paul. Of course, Paul can't take total credit for that because it is the executive who ripped his suggestions apart and put them back together again properly. And the Constitution, another fascinating document designed to give everybody in Freedom Party a chance to get involved. But that's just part of the enthusiasm that Paul has instilled in me for this party, and I hope that he gets the chance to instill it in you and the potential candidates to come for the next election. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Paul McKeever.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you. It's hard to live up to that, you know.
Get back.
I'll pay him later. In 1995, Ontario was desperate for a change. Under the socialist reign of the NDP, we had been suffering through higher unemployment. The debt was ballooning. Propaganda and lies were the order of the day as new, inventive, and wholly unjust forms of taxation, such as photo radar, were introduced and, in that case, recharacterized as improvements in safety. To mask the economic pressures that mandated a decrease in the excesses of government, the NDP introduced Ray Days. All comrades would share the pain. We had been assaulted by ads that repulsively informed the unemployed that they need not apply for a government job if they were of the wrong race and sex. for children, for students, for the working folk, for the retired. One's future, under the tyranny of a government knows best political party, was grim. Ontario had had enough. Things were looking up for Freedom Party. To the Ontario voter in 1995, we were offering a distinctive alternative to the nanny state of Bob Rae. We offered freedom. Lower taxes, an end to racist hiring quotas, an end to photo radar. In short, we gave voters a choice. With the Liberals and the NDP proposing more government programs, we offered common sense. There was just one problem. We were not alone in offering Ontario an alternative. Putting a new, more free market-oriented face on the progressive Conservatives, Mike Harris too offered the voter common sense. Lower taxes, an end to racist hiring quotas, and an end to photo radar. But he did it with the backing of a very old, well-known political party with seats in the House, or the legislature, and with the eyes and ears of the press. In the grim emptiness of socialist Ontario, this was no time for wasting one's vote on a young upstart party with too few candidates to form a government. In such despair, few cared whether the policies of the PCs were founded on a lasting commitment to political ideology. It was good enough that these policies were offered at all, and if the PCs had simply prepared them over a six-pack on the back of a cocktail napkin, that was fine. At least with the PCs, we had a respectable chance of getting rid of the NDP and of fending off the look-alike Liberals. Indeed, many members of Freedom Party were struck with the same feelings. Many of us knew that the Harris Revolution was just a phase for the PCs, and that Freedom Party was the only party in Ontario with a lasting, principled commitment to free markets, property rights, choice, responsibility, and equality under the law. But perhaps more than most, we were torn by the reality that only the progressive Conservatives could deliver a government. We continued to support Freedom Party, but some of us, fearing another 5 years of Bob Rae, voted for the PCs. The PCs won the election of '95, of course, and for the most part, many in Ontario liked what they saw as compared to the old, the bad old days with Bob Rae. And when the election writ of 1999 was dropped, most in Ontario saw little reason for change. Fearing a return to the government knows best offerings of the Liberals and NDP, Ontario again handed the PCs a majority. And as in 1995, Ontario voters, including many Freedom Party members and supporters, struggled with strategic voting. Better, some thought, to vote PC and win than to vote Freedom Party and risk a return to a society managed invasively by government. The PCs still had some policies that looked kind of like Freedom Party policies, and Freedom Party was still not running enough candidates to form a government. The PCs were a reasonable approximation to Freedom Party, some thought, so it was good enough to vote PC. Once again, Freedom Party suffered by being in the shadow of the Mike Harris Tories. But something happened earlier this year that changed everything. Mike Harris resigned from the leadership of the PCs, and even from the Ontario legislature. The ensuing race to replace him as leader disclosed something that beforehand was not easy to see. The PCs were divided camp. Approximately 60% of the progressive Conservatives feared public backlash from years of PC rule and sought to secure a new agenda for the PCs under a left-leaning, liberal-minded leader. Approximately 40% refused to turn back the clock and back Jim Flaherty. We learned that the two factions within the PC party had been held together by a personality, not by an ideology, specifically the personality of Mike Harris and his perceived chances of bringing the party another victory. History now tells us that Ernie Eves was unable to accomplish the same feat. Or perhaps it's more accurate to say that he's unwilling to do so. In little time at all, Eves began a campaign designed to sever the connection between Mike Harris and himself, to announce to all Ontario that the PCs were now rejecting privatization, free markets, choice, personal responsibility. The party agenda now having been firmly seized by the Red Tories, those in favour of common sense would be silenced and left on the sidelines. Common sense would be replaced with a scatterbrained, make-it-up-as-you-go-along style of governance. The PCs would now lead by following public opinion, which is to say they would cease to lead at all. Progressive Conservatives would now be considered synonymous with Liberals. Within weeks of assuming the premiership, Ernie Eves announced that the Taxpayer Protection Act would be amended so that it could no longer protect the taxpayer. Legislation that once required a referendum to eliminate or delay planned tax cuts or tax credits now expressly permitted Ernie to put off tax cuts and education tax credits without calling a referendum. And having gotten rid of taxpayer protection, that's exactly what he did. Gone were the tax cuts, and gone were the tax credits that were designed to decrease the penalty one suffers for choosing to send one's child to a private school. The NDP, the Liberals, and the leftist establishment howled in protest about the privatization of Hydro One. Ernie caved in. Hydro One would now remain under state control. After an unusually hot summer, people received their electricity bills. Prior to May 1, 2002, their electricity had been subsidized by the taxpayer so that they could pay for electricity at the artificial price of 4.3 cents. Now, with much of the real cost of electricity removed from the tax rolls and printed on our electricity bills, many of us were surprised and outraged. We didn't realize that the real cost of electricity was that high. Socialist price caps had hidden that fact from our view. And of course, the left was quick to pretend that the cost of electricity had really increased. The left told us that the cost of electricity had increased, of course, because of the introduction of a profit motive. The left had refused to tell us that the real causes of these prices were years of massive government investments in short-lived nuclear facilities, which gave rise to huge debt burdens and dwindling supplies of electricity. The left demanded a return to the bad old days of government monopoly and price caps. But it wasn't only the left. Rising to exact his revenge on Ernie Eves for earlier throwing him out of cabinet. Now from the backbenches, Cam Jackson publicly demanded that something be done about the price of electricity. If there ever was a time for a premier to have set the record straight, this was it. This was the time for Ernie Eves to explain that the price increase was largely illusory, that everyone's blinders had simply been removed by the elimination of price caps and the transparency of billing, that people had been paying this price through the tax rolls until May 1, 2002. But did he lead? Did he defend common sense? No. He instead reimposed the 4.3 cent price cap on consumption. Now the difference between the 4.3 cents and the real cost of your electricity would ultimately involve higher taxes and more debt for your grandchildren. And it didn't take long for Liberal leader Dalton McGuinty to follow. Only weeks after reimposing the 4.3 cent cap, McGuinty and his Liberals voted unanimously in favor of Ernie Eves' price cap legislation. The Liberals actually removed their old policy from their website. It had supported a free market for the production of consumption in electricity. But in true Orwellian fashion, the web page was replaced. Now it says, power generation facilities in Ontario will be kept in government hands, but they will be brought to heel. The results of this about-face have been catastrophic. Local utilities are now in over their heads, having invested millions of dollars in metering equipment and other necessary equipment to support the switch to a market-oriented supply of electricity. Retailers have actually been thrown out of business, and within days of the announcement on November 11th, reimposing the price caps began winding up. And a list of experts as long as the Pickering A nuclear station are now warning of rolling blackouts and brownouts in the winter and summer to come. Both the Liberals and the Progressive Conservatives have essentially adopted the government knows best agenda. Neither are proposing choice in schools. Neither are proposing tax cuts. Both are committed to an electricity system that is owned and run by the state, that discourages the private sector from the investment needed to increase the supply of electricity and to bring down the price of electricity in Ontario. And that chains ourselves and our children to even greater debt. Under the new Red Tory management, the agenda of the PCs has merged with that of the Ontario Liberal Party. In reality, we now have two Liberal parties, Liberal Red and Liberal Blue. The only difference is that McGuinty Liberals actually have a vision for Ontario, scary as it may be, whereas the Eves Liberals are continuously chasing their tails and continuing their efforts to sever their ties from common sense. Where does this leave Freedom Party? Well, I'm happy to say that this leaves Freedom Party in the best of all possible worlds. We are no longer in the shadow of Mike Harris. The NDP, the Liberals, and the PCs have become much more difficult to distinguish. And all three parties are proposing a return to the bad old days. Flip through the new Liberal platform and you'll find page after page of plans to start up new government bodies and to spend your money on them. Don't even try to find the PC platform. There isn't one. Eves is a man without a plan and a man who fully intends never to have one. Instead, he says he will simply manage the existing government, adding grease as the wheels begin to squeak, but certainly not letting common sense get in his way. In stark contrast, Freedom Party continues to offer common sense solutions to the voter. We are committed to the belief that free markets and free minds make common sense. We alone continue to propose the elimination of subsidies to power generation and the sale of government power generation assets. This will encourage new investment, increase the supply of clean electricity in the province, and decrease the price of power as we consume it. It's just common sense. We alone continue to propose choice in schools. We would eliminate the education tax and allow parents to pay tuitions directly to, and only to, the schools to which they choose to send their children. We're opposed to cookie-cutter schools. Not all children learn in the same way, and not all parents want their children to learn the morals of Dalton McGuinty. Giving parents the power to say no to a bad education just makes sense. We alone would allow competition in healthcare insurance and the provision of healthcare services. If government healthcare is all it's cracked up to be, government has nothing to fear from competition. And the voter has everything to gain from a system in which one does not get paid unless one provides the very best in healthcare. It just makes common sense. We alone see the insanity and unfairness of those in the 905, 519, 613, and 705 areas subsidizing Toronto subway systems and subsidizing Toronto housing. By subsidizing Toronto, we encourage business to leave our towns and go to Toronto. If the transportation and housing costs of one's employees are subsidized by the government, one can pay lower wages. As a result, we live where we work less and less often. Ontario workers spend an increasing amount of time commuting to subsidized Toronto while our hometowns become financially crippled ghost towns. That increased commuting causes gridlock on our roads and highways. Tempers flare. Our air is polluted as our cars run for 3 hours per day, when by working where we live we could have gotten to work more quickly, often only by bicycle. Only Freedom Party seems to see the impact of this intentional concentration in Toronto and the impact it's having on our health, our families, and our environment. The time has come to require Toronto and all municipalities to fund their own municipal expenditures with their own revenues. It just makes common sense. In short, there's no longer an alternative to Freedom Party for those who still believe in common sense. As Eves and McGuinty struggle to divide the left, we are no longer in the shadow of Mike Harris. We are prepared, but are we prepared to capitalize on the fortune that now presents itself? You bet we are. Freedom Party has formalized its structure. We have adopted a constitution that makes the operation of Freedom Party clear and understandable. Whether you want to be a member or a candidate or an organizer or a policymaker or the leader, whatever your desired type of involvement in Freedom Party's constitution gives you the direction you need to take action. We've also worked on a top-notch policy statement. Whether you're a Freedom Party member from way back or someone new to Freedom Party, the policies and direction of Freedom Party are now clearly and concisely available for all Ontario to see. Read only a few of the policies, and it will be clear to you that Freedom Party has not abandoned common sense. Yes, we have the organizational structure and the policies well in place, but that's not all. Freedom Party will be running more than enough candidates to form a government in the next Ontario election. Whereas we ran only 14 candidates in 1999, we already have, as Bob mentioned earlier, over 40 candidates preparing to run in the next election, which is expected this spring. And we still have over 6 months to prepare and add more to the list. We also have a strategy that will give Freedom Party the power to make an impact in Ontario. We've identified the ridings in Ontario, as Bob noted, where the race is tight between Liberals and Conservatives. We'll be working hard to influence the vote and let Ontarians know about Freedom Party in all of those ridings. And we'll not let party colour stand in the way of ideas. We will not be branding ourselves as that other party this time by using signs that aren't of the traditional red, blue, or orange. We will instead be making a point. We will be using colours to promote true and fair comparison of the Freedom Party candidates with those of the other parties. At the very least, we fully expect to raise awareness of Freedom Party as a party of common sense. In short, all of the things that made a vote for Freedom Party seem wasted are quickly fading. We no longer share with the PCs the free market position on the political spectrum. We now own it. We no longer will no longer be a force incapable of forming a government. The Freedom Party will have enough candidates to do so. There is no sense anymore in which a vote for Freedom Party is a wasted vote. Indeed, to vote for anyone other than Freedom Party in the next election can only be seen at this point as a waste. This is an exciting time for all of us. We have before us a rare opportunity. But with that opportunity comes a duty. A duty to ensure that the clock is not turned back in Ontario. A duty to ensure that Ontario continues to look to the future, to pave the way for freer markets and freer minds, to ensure that the future inherited by our children is a bright and prosperous one. Let us seize that opportunity. Let us rise to the challenge. You can trust that I'm doing so. And I know that, knowing many of the people here in the room, you'll continue to do so as well. Thank you.
I'm sure that everybody has, or a lot of people have questions for Paul. If you just please write them down on the sheets of paper, and maybe Carol, would you do me a favor and just collect some of the papers that people are holding up to, and then just read out the questions, and make your questions for either Paul's speech on electricity, health, and policies, or even for Bob on some of the strategy things that we were just that he was just bringing up here, maybe about the sign colors, the fact that we are the true conservatives, we are the classical liberals. That kind of a push is very interesting as well. So write your questions down on the pads and just pass them up, and I'll bring them along to Paul and Bob. Carol? Thanks, Bill. Charles Alito writes, how do we avoid a private electricity producer selling to the United States and leaving Ontario wanting? Paul. Private producer, also second part to the question, a private producer shutting down generators to inflate prices.
Yeah, that is going now. I think the answer, Charles, we don't really want to prevent the sale of electricity to the United States. In fact, we want to encourage it. We want to create an environment where a greater number of generators will want to set up shop in Ontario. We want to allow them to set up those wires across the lake, over to Quebec, westward. Let Ontario have an environment, an economic environment, where private generators can make a ton of money, hire our Ontario workers, and let us all prosper in the process. Again, shutting down generators to inflate prices will only leave them out of the loop when it comes to earning money. Those who want to earn money will have to sell electricity, so I guess that's the best way to do it. If they find that it's inefficient to be running when prices are down at 1 cent per kilowatt hour, what have you, well then that's their decision as well. But I think generally you'll see that if the markets are open widely enough, they'll keep those things churning just as fast as they can.
Any further questions? A couple of questions here. One for Bob. Tim wants to know, will the Freedom Party name appear on the new election signs? So that's just the name, not just the candidate, but the name.
That's actually something we haven't really decided. I don't think the name will appear, because it's only the candidate's name that we're planning right at the moment, because that's all that appears on the ballot. And that's what we want the voter to be thinking about, is actually the candidate that they're voting for, almost less than the party in an awkward sort of way. So right now, that's still nebulous, but I don't think it's going to actually say Freedom Party on it. I think in the past it didn't either. I think in the past we only had the FP logo. This is a very old sign, this one here. But that's where I think it is standing right now.
Here's a question about calculating provincial income tax. Has become a nearly impossible, complicated task. Please comment.
I think it was in 2000 that we switched the system, or the system was switched rather, to one in which you took your federal taxable income and then applied new provincial rates, progressive rates to that, which would differ, of course, from the federal rates. I guess the best thing to say to that is we obviously are in favor of a single rate for all taxpayers, which would simplify it greatly. Right now, there's not even that much of a progression in Ontario. I think the range is from somewhere around 6 or 7% up to about 11%. So by just picking a number that didn't penalize anyone any greater, but perhaps gave a little bit of relief and treated us all on the same equal footing, one tax rate for everybody, we'd be a lot further ahead.
Question about education, directed to Paul. When does the education start to educate those on the taxpayers' payroll, i.e. teachers, police, fire, etc., that social policies cannot be supported without the private sector?
Not sure that I understood the question. Social policies cannot be supported
Without the private sector. So in other words, it's a question about educating those who are on the at the trough, so to speak. Though you can't really say that about the firefighters and the teachers. Those who are on the government payroll.
Well, I guess the best way to teach anybody about the private sector is to let them be exposed to it. You know, some of my teachers, my mother, my friends are rather teachers, including my mother, and God love them. But a lot of them just have no idea about the pressures that many people in the private sector are under. Which isn't to say that we should all be under more pressure, but it is to say that unless you've actually gone through the dance of putting in 10 hours and being paid for 8 because you're on a flat salary, your reaction to being expected to stay in the classroom for an extra hour might be a little less, or a little bit more exaggerated than it ought to be. I think the thing we need to do in terms of education, I'm having trouble dealing with the question because I'm not quite sure what the intended focus was, but I guess the answer is, if we allow teachers to see how other schools can run and not simply have to be teaching the preformed stuff that's taught or prepared at the ministry at the highest level, they might then see an alternative to teaching the morality of Dalton McGuinty or the evils of the private sector.
Some questions over there?
Could I clarify that?
Sure.
What I meant was, for instance, let's just to use a specific example. We live in Sarnia. Sarnia is the chemical valley of Ontario, and I've been there since I was born there. And I've watched as we lost $10,000, $15,000, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 of jobs out in Chemical Valley by plants closing or downsizing. And at the same time, I've seen our social content, anybody that's paid 2 tax dollars grow, get higher wages, but the continued loss of the private sector. CN just announced 1,100 jobs being gone. I mean, you can see it all over the place. And yet, the people that work for the government still want their raises, and it's a suction of our money because the private sector is not making the profits, and the guy on the street with the variety store, or pool hall, or the video store, they're not making 60, 70, 80 grand. And those tax dollars aren't rolling into the government the way they used to. But nobody's addressing that. Nobody's saying, okay, Dow Chemical, for instance, just got rid of 1,000 jobs at $50,000 a year job. There's $50 million payroll per year. I mean, this has cost us in Sarnia $500 million a year. But nobody addresses that. They just think that we can continue to pay the benefits and everything else, the hospitals, the fire trucks, the police cars, the whole lot of that. Where's the money going to come from?
But
do you know what I'm saying?
yeah, I think I understand what you're saying. You're saying, I think, effectively that how is the public, in particular the public who are in the private sector, going to gain an appreciation that money doesn't grow on trees? That in fact there have to be producers if there are to be consumers of that tax money. I think the only way to do that is through politics. through the continued efforts of organizations like Freedom Party, through our newsletters, through our efforts between elections, through election time behaviors. When you sit down and read our policy handbook, and I don't know if you've done that yet or not, we have made a distinct effort to explain why free markets work and why they're necessary and why you really can't fool the free market. In other words, why there's no free lunch. We're doing our part to teach that. And I think that's really the only way that people are going to learn, at least until free markets, economics, and the no free lunch attitude start getting taught in schools, which will only happen once schools are allowed to operate without competing with a subsidized public school system.
May I comment that says on one thing? As of Tuesday this week, they took their official count of the number of private schools in the province. And last year there were 750, and as of last Tuesday there were 801.
Excellent.
And that's 50, and you know there's over 10 and that's 50.
Very good.
Demand is there. We have to use that information.
Clearly the demand is there, and as long as we pave the way so that people who want to send their children to those schools don't also have to pay for a system they're not using, I think we'll find that number growing much more quickly.
A couple more questions as well. There's two questions here basically on the same topic. One is, why is there an advantage to running in closely contested ridings? Is there a clear past evidence of this being an advantage? And the question close to that is, in the past, smaller parties have been hit hard in areas with close races. Voters have abandoned them to ensure the outcome of the election. What makes you think that this won't happen this time? Will the voters really know that the PCs are blue Liberals?
Excellent question. Let me give you a little bit of personal history. I ran in Toronto Centre Rosedale in the 1999 election. One day I opened up the newspaper, and the Toronto Star, of course, and they were doing riding profiles. There were several ridings in Toronto, and they were going to cover each one, I think one per day. Well, today, the day I opened the newspaper, it was Toronto Centre Rosedale, my riding. And I didn't expect to see my name mentioned in there, of course. But I did at least expect to see that the correct number of candidates was listed. What I learned was they said that there are 4 candidates running in Toronto Centre Rosedale, when in reality, there weren't 5, there were 11 candidates running in Toronto Centre Rosedale. I wrote a letter off to the newspaper and I said, you know, you've printed something that's not true. In fact, it's something you know is not true. We had sent them press releases, for example, saying that we were running in that riding. And we hope that you will inform the public that there are, in fact, 11, not 4. The reason there was 4 instead of 3, by the way, was because the 4th was John Sewell, a former mayor of Toronto, and they just couldn't leave him out of the mention. I got a letter back saying, your letter has been forwarded to the Ombudsman, which of course delayed the process another week, 2 weeks, pushing it almost to the date of election, when I got a letter back from the Ombudsman saying, we'll mention you when you're a factor. I wrote a letter back saying I didn't want you to say my name, I simply wanted you to tell the truth about the number of candidates in the riding. So what I came away from on that was, you've got to be a factor. Not too difficult. How do you become a factor? You become a factor by making life difficult for those who otherwise would get a free ride. You make it difficult by running signs that are shockingly similar in appearance. You make it difficult by being a kingmaker in those ridings where the Liberals and the Conservatives are very close. You should see the hate mail we get from that one riding in particular with the 55 votes between the Liberals and the Conservatives. Prince Edward Hastings. They fear us. They fear us greatly. And when they saw us in the newspaper with our September meeting, we started getting hate mail. What do you think you're doing? You're going to split the right. Of course, there was no right left to split. But that didn't make any difference. The point was, they were doing the story for us. They were getting angry. When those signs get drilled into the ground, that's going to be newsworthy. No news occurs without a who, what, where, and why, and we're it. And as soon as Freedom Party is mentioned in the newspaper, people will have to look and say, who are these guys anyway? And when they simply look to our website and see that we're in favor of common sense solutions that the Tories have abandoned, the stuff will hit the fan. That'll also happen in those tight ridings, where everyone will be worried about splitting the right, strategic voting. Let them talk about it. Great. Will be a factor.
Another question for Paul, maybe for Bob as well. What kind of media advertising is the Freedom Party going to use in the next election, e.g. TV, radio, newspaper, National Post? Bob, you want to take that one?
We aren't planning to do any direct TV or newspaper advertising unless it's paid for specifically and the money's raised for that purpose and somebody wants us to do that, which is how we did it in the past, in fact. There was one by-election in London North here, when we had a London North, I think that's what they called it. And we ran Barry Malcolm there, and we had a large moneyed contributor who said he would spend a fortune on our television ads, and we ran television ads. We were the only political party to be running television ads that election. We had other ads. These ads were running, by the way, in prime time during the then Johnny Carson show, things like that. Didn't affect the vote at all, because that kind of advertising is a little premature for where we're at now. We'll take it if we can get it. I certainly wouldn't say no if somebody came and said this money is contingent on you doing X, and then we'll do X. But we're not going to be putting our efforts there. The most effective way that people will see us is through the media by free, if they cover us in the news and in the newspapers, and by delivering literature door to door, by getting on the radio talk shows. Talk radio, by the way, is probably the more right wing of the spectrum that's out there in the first place, and a lot of them like us and are opening the doors to us. So in that sense, we're getting a lot of media. I'm still on Left, Right, and Center every Wednesday on CJBK here in London. And they won't take me off the air during the election because I will not be a candidate, so I'll carry on. And so that's the kind of way we're going to play to the media. Another thing we're doing with the media is like this editorial board meeting that you folks are going to have on Monday. You have to get in at the top and then see how they're going to treat us, and we'll play it from there, see what they do. And so we're playing that one by ear right now, but that wouldn't be where I'd put your first dollar. I'd put your first dollar where we've already learned that it's the most effective in terms of getting us votes and the response we want.
Okay, Robert? Yeah. Charles wants to know, it's more of a federal question, but Paul, how do you deal, or how do we deal with the illegal taxation, for example, the GST? Again, a federal question, but
Yeah.
want to handle it?
We don't pay it, right?
It's a federal question.
Okay, repeat.
Well, you know, it is a federal question, so it won't be something we'd be addressing in the election or even as a political party. But I'd certainly be happy to talk with you about that because, of course, we now have Freedom Party of Canada that is starting to take root, and that is where that kind of thing will be discussed.
Are there any further questions? Really? Well, if not, then we'll wrap it up. Just a few things. First of all, we have a draw for door process. Actually, I'll leave that till last, but I just want to get these few things in here. Can everybody just please, when you're on your way out, return the name tags. Return the name tags. And to the desk over there. And I guess we're ready for the donations, unless there's anything I've forgotten to mention, Bob? No? Okay, well, let's have a draw for the door prize. And I'll ask Carol if you want to select somebody to draw the winning tickets, hopefully somebody not in the executive, just to show that it's not fixed. And you want to just choose anybody, maybe?
Oh, okay. Whoever's closest. Why? Dan.
Well, give it to me. I got my tickets right here.
Okay, the number is 113057.
I missed it by one.
What
What is this for, by the way? What is this for?
That's a good question.
This is the first time we've done this, in case you haven't noticed.
Do you want to have a choice or?
You better give her a choice now.
Yeah,
You
you
get
better
your
get
choice. You get first choice.
Video or the book?
Okay.
2 books and a
And Carol, if you want to have somebody else draw the next ticket. Oh, that's a good idea, yeah. Carol, perhaps Elizabeth can draw the next ticket.
Yes, that's a good idea.
Show us your choice.
She chose the DVD. Compliments of direct video.
Shameless plug. Okay, 113052. There.
113052, Rose. And if Rose could select the next winner. She's chosen the book. Farewell to Peaceful Kingdom.
There you go.
113011.
113011.
That's for myself.
Okay.
Please.
That's up to date. That's like the most recent.
I can always give another free copy.
Just make up your mind quick.
I'm going to give away a free copy of Atlas Shrugged.
Okay, Atlas Shrugged it is.
113010.
113010. Not
That's
me.
again, is it?
Oh yeah, choose your own ticket again here. Go ahead. He knows how this works.
It's not wait.
No.
Right before me.
3010.
Yeah. Well, somebody's got it.
Someone's got it.
What was the ticket we just drew?
113011.
11 and then 10.
Somebody must have it.
This might be you.
Yeah, it's assumed you're supposed to be looking at your
Here it
tickets.
is.
Yeah, there you go. I think what's left of the CDs. Okay, one. There you go. There we go. Oh, isn't that it?
Oh, no.
There were two of the same CD.
Oh, I see. I see.
Okay, 113022.
113022.
That would be me.
That
Lloyd Blacker.
most recent. Congratulations. That's it.
Okay, so everybody have a safe drive home, and just perhaps one round of applause once more for our speakers, Bob and Paul. Feel free to hang around a bit if you wish, and I'm sure Paul would like to speak to you if you have any questions. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.